Millie now, who's going to speak about what you can look at the local level, what you can use to think about what the future is going to look like for you if we don't do anything about climate.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a tool that has been developed by different partners in the state, but I think the lead agency in this tool, in developing this tool, was the California Energy Commission. Here we're looking at the number of extreme heat days, and the reason obviously that we're going through each of these examples of heat days, I'm going to talk about precipitation and then wildfire risk, is because this is really important to emergency managers to understand, where we're going and how we can change our policies or our planning in order to be prepared. So on the left panel, you'll see a graph, and this is a graph coming out of a climate model. So just to recap, what the climate model is all of the conditions of our climate. Scientists have put these into a software, basically, and let the model predict what might happen in the future given all the conditions that they input. So what they've done on the left graph is included greenhouse gas emissions that are peaking at year 2040. So this is a policy scenario that we have the government capping emissions. So this is showing us that our number of extreme heat days, which are days over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, will be increasing over time. So annually we see about 4.3 days a year on average over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And in the future, if we have policy conditions that cap emissions by 2040, then we'll see 28 days per year over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is a lot more, obviously. And then on the right, we have the same scenario, except that emissions are not capped. So this is a scenario where politics or government aren't capping emissions, and it's basically, what we're doing now continues on. And in that case, we would see 48 days of extreme heat per year on average. And this is a huge concern for the health of the public. So heat days are really hard on certain populations, including the elderly and children and anyone prone to respiratory issues. So on the next slide, this is the number of heat days plotted against the months of the year. So right now, we're really used to seeing heat days in the summer months, so June to August. But in the future, so on this side of the graph, it goes up to 2100. We see heat days spreading basically from spring to fall. And so this has a lot of implications for wildfire, drought, and also public health, similarly to what I said on the last slide. And another thing to notice too is that the dots are different colors. The purple is the relatively cooler extreme heat day, and that would be a day between 104 or 105 degrees. But as you move to the yellow, it gets upwards towards 110, 130 degrees Fahrenheit. And so you see, as time wears on, we see a lot more hot days by the end of the century. And so to imagine it, this weekend's going to be in the 110 range. That might even be, one of the cooler days that we see as extreme heat later on. Now we're going to take a look at the precipitation in the future, possibly, according to the climate models. So this is an annual precipitation graph, and this is considering the scenario that emissions continue as normal, or as we are now, so not a lot of heavy restrictions on greenhouse gas emissions. And so, as you can see, the general trend line of the graph, or the average, stays pretty constant. But what I want to bring your attention to is the very dramatic shifts from year to year. So we see really low lows of precipitation followed by very high precipitation years. And the way that I like to think about it is this is kind of like seeing more years like last year, where we came from a very severe drought to more water than we know what to do with, and that might become much more regular, and that has a lot of far-reaching implications for the way we manage our water, which is why we're really excited about this drought resiliency project. And it also has a lot of implications for the way we grow our food, the way that the biology and different animals live. So it's important to consider. And then the last point would be, last but not least, of course, wildfire risk. So if we continue on with our normal emissions as we are now, we actually see much higher percentage of area burned for wildfires. So not only do wildfires become more likely and more frequent, but the severity of the wildfire is also growing. So we're spending more money to fight it. We're seeing more acres burned per event. And if any of you want to explore this a little bit more, I forgot to mention that all of these preceding slides are specifically for Modesto. So if you guys want to play around with this anymore, it's on CalAdapt website, and you put in your location, and you can look at the different models and what they tell you about different things. So it's a really interesting thing to do if you have some time. Thank you for having us.